There we go.
Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I'm Diego. I'm a Senior Director of Engineering at Intercom. I've been at the company for 2 years. I actually joined to work on building the Fin product, but my role changed quite dramatically, like in the last year or so. Now I lead our solutions organization. We basically work with our most strategic customers to help them achieve better outcomes with Fin. So basically, I lead solutions engineering, solutions architecture, and a forward deployed team, basically. So we're using a bunch of stuff such as MCP to actually figure out how to drive good outcomes for our customers. And I'd love to pass it over to Anna-Marie to introduce herself as well and share a little bit about what you're working on.
Thanks, Diego. Hi, everyone. So excited to be here tonight. My name is Anna-Marie. People call me AMC because that sounds way more fun. And Anna-Marie is just a really long name. I am a director of product over AI and agents at Zapier. I've been there for a couple years building out agentic functionality, both in terms of helping you build your workflows as well as agents that execute workflows, and now MCP, where you can do ad hoc things or use MCP to execute workflows. So lots of exciting things around the AI orchestration, agent orchestration space, and excited to be here.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. My name is Brendan. People do not call me Bib, although maybe they should after that intro. A director of product over at Cloudflare, working on Cloudflare Workers, our serverless compute platform. A lot of the biggest companies who have built remote MCP servers are actually built on Cloudflare, including Intercom, so we're happy to have them as a customer. And so we work, we kind of help people deploy agents that can kind of scale and support MCP and speak all the latest protocols, and I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining us today. I want to start with a quick question to the audience. Can I get a show of hands of which one of you have played around with MCP? Cool. Lots of folks. How many of you have deployed MCP in production and have production system running MCP? Cool. That's awesome. All right. That's great. It is hard. It's kind of messy. It's sort of it's new, and there's a bunch of different things that you can do about it. We'll be talking about some of the challenges that we all have experienced and share a little bit of our insights as well. Have a few prompts to start a conversation today. Then we'll open up for Q&A as Alan shared. So starting with a question for both of you, Anna-Marie and Brendan. Tell me a little bit about how MCP is changing how your customers integrate systems, and sort of what are some of the things that you've seen change basically with MCP?
I mean, I think that there's kind of two angles for us. One of the things that surprised us the most is the degree to which there's this hunger at some of the bigger and bigger companies that you would be surprised, usually aren't the fast movers, really approaching MCP as the primary way to make their engineering teams more efficient, and having all kinds of challenges along the way of getting overloaded context, et cetera, and trying to kind of navigate that themselves.
I would say MCP is, the protocol itself has just been a great marketing win for AI. Because for the longest time, everyone was just kind of chatting with their AI systems, or if you were really clever, you were building them in as a developer. But MCP really unlocked the imagination of the world, that they could, as individuals, get AI to do stuff for them. And so we see that it's really precipitating a shift of perspective, that putting things into production is something that we used to expect was blocked and kind of bottlenecked on people who could build systems. And now we're seeing that it's shifting to the bottleneck of people who can define problems. And it's really lowering the barrier to entry to push something to production across the board. And really, there's a lot in AI, not just MCP that's doing it, but MCP just hit a marketing moment and got people really excited about that. So I see that it's tipped the scales, not just for how people use MCP, but how people think to use AI to accomplish things, and who thinks they can use AI to accomplish things.
Yeah. I love that, and I think it's. What we have seen is that it makes you be able to integrate with multiple systems much more easy, and I think the interfaces, the previous standards, they were super useful as well, right? When you think of REST and gRPC and all the standards that MCP is built on top of. They're very useful, right? But they're more human-oriented, sort of like integration patterns where you have to build a bunch of like brittle integrations, and a lot of folks are doing things very like repetitively and so on and so forth. And I feel like we've seen a lot of customers actually reduce like maintainability, like burden and so on and so forth, by using MCP and just like building a layer on top of like their existing like APIs, which is what we did at Intercom, by the way. It's sort of like we just built a server on top of our existing APIs, and it makes it so much easier for you to use with agents, basically.
I mean, the secret is really that everybody thinks it's about the tools in MCP or like what capabilities an MCP server exposes, and that's what's unique. But it's really that everybody agreed on OAuth. And like, if it was backed by a REST API, but everybody could just agree on how to do authorization, like you'd probably get the same output. And that's what's interesting, is that like, it's not the protocol itself that's necessarily going to last. It's that like everybody has agreed on this.
Yeah, the adoption and so on. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One other question that I had for both of you, it's basically, what are some of the hardest challenges that you've seen, like making MCP powered products available to your customers, right? Like, for example, you folks have like, I think it's 30,000 different like apps and like lots of like ways to integrate with Zapier. Same thing with Cloudflare. You folks run like a massive like infra footprint, and there's a bunch of operations that are quite dangerous to just let an agent go and do things on their own. So like, I would love to hear more about like, what are some of the largest challenges that you've seen basically building with MCP?
I think one of the biggest ones that I've personally seen is that it's kind of like the browser wars of just like which parts of the JavaScript spec work on which, like caniuse.com. Anybody familiar with Can I Use? I'm seeing a couple headed, like not, but the idea is we have agreed ostensibly on this protocol, but every client has implemented the protocol slightly differently. Every server implements the protocol slightly differently, not everyone. And so you have this like in-by-in problem of integration that is just really rough edges, and it's moving so quickly, it's hard to find definitive information on how things work. And the integration surface area of a chat interface for like ensuring that you've like connected your server and your client working properly together, it's lovely when you use that for confirming that something's working and you get a hallucinated answer. And it's like, yep, I've connected your MCP server. And you're like, great, do a thing. And it's like, I have no tools. Like, well, you told me you connected the MCP. It was like, no, I didn't. And so I think the major issues right now are just everyone's choosing to implement it slightly differently. We haven't figured that out yet. Yeah. And it's hard to see what you've got connected and how it's working, because chat as a configuration interface is pretty lame. But at the end of the day, the ground truth of what you want to do with AI and the use cases you have for MCP is the biggest blocker. Just like, what do you want to do? That's the number one question, the conversation I have with every customer is like, tell me use cases. How should I be using this? Yeah. And everyone's desperate for that. So I think there's a socialization problem at the bottom. Yeah,
the browser metaphor and analogy really resonates. Like if you were building when Internet Explorer 5 was around, and sort of like you had like round borders starting to come up, and then you throw in a HTC file on the server, and then you have to use this for this browser, but for those you don't need it, and you have to walk around a bunch of like these constraints. It's really important. And I think the point you're making is sort of like, the more that the protocol is used through a shared standard, the more powerful like it will become right over time. And
yeah, so every company that's building a server, every organization that's building a server has to think about all the different ways the different clients have implemented the protocol and how to make it interoperable across those. So that's something that we think is it's really helpful to have some like an aggregation of servers, and that's what Zapier is offering. It's like one place to build one server that you can put 8,000 different apps into, instead of having to like go to Jira and go to Asana and go to Linear. I don't know why you use all three of those, and then bring them together. So.
Well, and also, I mean, controlling which tools you want to expose to a client, to an agent, to different things. Like, I mean, if you just connect all the MCP tools in the universe to your agent, you're going to run out of context like this. And most of the MCP servers that are out there that you've probably used are built completely the wrong way. They just take up an existing API and they just map kind of tools one-to-one to it. And that is 100% the problem that everybody's going through right now and trying to figure out.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And when we were building our procedures product, our tasks product, and like just for context for everyone, Fin, our AI agent, it has this feature called Fin Procedures and Fin Tasks, which is basically the ability for Fin to take actions, right? So like tool use basically under the hood. We had a bunch of issues where we were trying to experiment with MCP and so on and so forth, and even like REST APIs, you like go and set up 100 data connectors, then you have all of these wonderful things that the AI agent can do, and then it doesn't know which one to pick, right? Like, and sort of like what is the best tool for the job, and you end up with a bunch of hallucinations and so on and so forth. So we built this. We added actually a platform feature that already existed to procedures, which was audience targeting. You were at Intercom probably when the feature already existed, Brendan, and it's sort of like it's an existing construct that we had to work around the problem of like servers having way too many tools available and like making like coming up with a bunch of like context loads and so on and so forth. So really, really interesting.
It's been really fun with the Zapier Agents product, which is kind of like a client-server combination. When we first launched, we had a hard limit of 15 tools. Not because you couldn't add more, but we just saw the agent just performed worse as you added more. And so we're like, let's give some guardrails for customers so they don't shoot themselves in the foot. And then just being able to like increase that over time and feeling more and more confident with that has been really interesting to watch the models and everything evolve effectively.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great. Let's move on to another prompt, and this is suggested by both of you, which I love. What about it is bad? Like hot takes only. Like what is broken about MCP, and maybe even about a conception of like MCP. Who wants to go first?
I'll shoot for it. So I think our hot take at Cloudflare is that the MCP server itself should be the thing that writes its own code and then executes code to do tasks. If you ask an agent today to go perform some task for you, and it's pretty complex, maybe it has a bunch of different tool calls along the way, you will just sit there and watch the agent loop go and go and go in a circle, and it calls different tools over and over and over, and it's incredibly slow. And on every single step of that process, you're going back through inference, which is expensive and burning holes in people's wallet. But you could instead just ask an MCP server, and MCP servers can be sub-agents, there's nothing holding that back, to go and perform some task, write itself some code, and then go execute it, and you just get way better results. And not that many people are doing this right now, but this is when you talk to people in SF who like really have done evals and tried it, like they get way, way better results.
Yeah, we've done that a little bit internally as well. I think it's really fascinating watching people get so excited about the capability set of LLMs plus MCP, and then say like there's this infinite universe of capability and capacity and bandwidth and all that, and we're gonna like bottleneck all of that behind a chat input field, and like a human is gonna be like, do a thing, enter. And that's very constrained for this incredible, I mean, it's almost like the genie in Aladdin. It's like unlimited power, itty bitty chat interface. And so I think that there's a lot to be explored around trigger infrastructure. We see a lot of usage in the Zapier agent ecosystem around time of day, time of week, day of month, et cetera, and like kicking off workflows. And just think about the number of things you do like every Monday, every Friday, every blah, blah, blah. And so enabling your LLM of choice to be able to do that. Trigger infrastructure is woefully missing in the MCP ecosystem. So I think that we're going to see more and more systems evolve on the other side of MCPs to help people do these things, either at a particular time in response to a particular event, or as compute gets less expensive, hopefully, and power becomes cheaper because we finally do some nuclear. We'll start having more ambient agents that are monitoring this ecosystem of things, and maybe not triggering on a single event, but watching like a horizon of events for a certain action potential threshold to have been achieved before kicking off, kind of how humans do. And so I think we'll get there eventually. We're not there yet, but I think the market's going to kind of arise around that. I think right now everyone just got so excited about what you can do if you type a command in and hit enter, and it's like, wait, there's a whole other set of things you can think about if you don't have to chat directly with it to do it.
Yep. I did not have a hot take, by the way, before you sent the article that you sent over about, I think it's code mode, the name of the work that you folks are doing at Cloudflare. And like, it really got me thinking that like the standard is just a standard, right? Like it has to be, for it to be useful, like you need to be able to like perform it like actions reliably and sort of like really be useful for the models as well and so on and so forth. And yeah, I would love to talk a little bit about like what you folks are doing with like code mode and sort of like what was the idea behind it? Like that was a really interesting article, and I think folks would benefit from it.
I mean, we often forget that like these models that we're all relying on, they're only as good as their training data. And that sounds like an obvious statement, but they really know, Markdown, TypeScript, they know programming languages, they're really good at it. And they've never heard of any of your tools that you've invented. They've never heard of what they do. They never heard of your like bespoke, weird JSON blob format that you've invented at your company. It's really cool, like as a programmer, like it's the right interface, but for the model, like they don't know. And so the whole idea was going, so like, okay, so we expose all these tools, which are these weird bespoke interfaces, like, could we just convert them back to TypeScript? And then could we have an agent go and call those tools as TypeScript code? And that's kind of what we ended up working on and built. And it's really early days, but just that kind of fundamental idea, it kind of permeates. We were talking about how Notion, the AI team at Notion works, and they've made a bunch of changes to Notion to kind of adapt to what are the models actually good at. And the models are just not good at the tools you invent. Yeah. They are good at what they already know how to do.
This is unrelated to MCP, but something that we tried with tasks, by the way. In early stages, we had the ambition to use the open API like spec to basically go and sort of like make everything available for Fin, and sort of like maybe we could have unlimited templates. And then we realized that there are a bunch of companies that focus on this full time, that we were overly ambitious and we cannot build that like with a team of 7 engineers. So we were like, yeah, we better not try to solve that problem. So yeah, but anyway, moving on to the next prompt. Of course, like you folks have a bunch of like, you serve a bunch of like businesses, a bunch of builders, right? Like, what are the largest opportunities, like you believe, for like builders when it comes to MCP? Like, what does MCP enable for your customers, and like some of the things that you think it unlocks basically to do with your products?
If you're in this room, you should probably go start a business that just exists as an MCP server that also is a chat GPT app. That's like the craziest opportunity ever. Like it's in the interface that is the arguably new web browser, and it's sitting right there, and like you can charge people for how many times they call tools, all these things. Like Stripe's done some crazy stuff there, and I just don't think enough people kind of are connecting the dots between like what's possible.
Yeah. I think I'll just kind of like share some use cases that I think are helpful. I'll share something I did like an hour before. Yeah, just an hour before coming here, I was struggling to make heads or tails of an 80 reply deep Slack thread. I don't know if y'all ever get those Slack threads with like 10 people commenting, and so just dropping the Slack thread via MCP into Claude. Slack has a summarization feature. It's a lovely feature, but being able to chat with a thread and like pull it into Claude and be like, I want all the thread replies here. Like, okay, what was this person saying? What was this about? Like, I don't understand that part. It's a game changer. We have sales folks that use Zapier MCP to search HubSpot and find info on a client that they're going to be meeting with, and use Google Slides to create a slide deck for that client. We have folks who use it as like a research assistant for like a bookkeeping research assistant to help us use Zapier MCP to search their QuickBooks and their various data sources for accounts payable. We have great like Claude projects. Claude projects, by the way, is great. I don't know if folks are using Claude projects. That's by far the best way to use MCP, in my opinion. Cursor, Claude projects, the end. but a cloud project that is filled with context from all of your granola notes, that you can have it run workflows to create summaries, action items. You get your Asana to-dos. You get there's so much there around just completely automating away all the busy work of your work and cutting through all the noise that we see people across every line of business in knowledge work powering their workflows. And I think it's really just limited by the problem. Like, can you think of a problem that you've got that you can probably use cloud projects and Zapier MCP to solve it?
That's awesome. Yeah, I will shamelessly steal my idea from the demo day that you and the team hosted, which is like Intercom has an MCP server. It's not like Fin, the product, but like our help desk product, where you get access to like all the things that you can do with a support help desk, right? Like in customer service, like you have such a wealth of like information when you have all this conversational data, et cetera. And like there's just so much that you can do with support data. And I think the demo that we did on demo day, on Cloudflare's demo day, was like, I believe it was like a linear.
It was like you looked up a support ticket, right?
Yeah.
And then you like made a linear issue out of it, something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Basically like a support ticket comes in and then linear connect pulls from Intercom and like creates the issue. And then another agent can go and like pick that up and like sort of like suggest a PR and so on and so forth. Like the opportunities are just so like endless. Like it's mind blowing. It's the type of stuff that like I can think of like a simpler way to do without like a solid like protocol like that's widely adopted and used and so on and so forth. So
yeah, I mean, we see tons and tons of people have workflows like that, and then connect all the different types of observability or MCP servers for, what was this customer's logs? Like we have one of our own, and there's a great one that Sentry has built for Sentry, and kind of connecting the dots between customer reported issues and actual telemetry. Like that use case works phenomenally well today right now. That's one of the things that's working the best.
One of my favorites is we had one of our folks internally was using the Glean MCP server and the Databricks MCP server to ask a question, get Glean to help find how our tables were defined and figure out what schema to incorporate, write the SQL query, execute it. It didn't work the first time. Go do some more research and like go in a loop a few times, find the answer, get that there, and then send an automated report to Slack. And that's just like the dream.
It's awesome. Yeah. It's I think it's a much more natural way of like also like creating all these integrations, right? Like sort of like you think of like previously the amount of work that it would take to do something like this, all these like massive data pipelines to ingest stuff real time and do this and do that and so on and so forth. And it's really powerful. I had one more prompt and then we'll open up for Q&A. Basically, where do you think this goes, like in your view? Like, and I'm curious about within the context of your product, like your companies, and also like in more sort of like if you look back, I was going to say 2 years, but we don't know what will happen in 3 months. Like in AI, like maybe like in the longest term that you can think of, like where this goes as well. Like so, both in your product, but also in a longer time horizon, more broadly for the industry. Where do you think this goes?
So at Zapier, we talk a lot about AI orchestration, and I think there was a key moment earlier this year where Zapier had the number of agents at Zapier eclipse the number of humans at Zapier, and like more active agents than active employees. And I think of where this goes is empowering every individual to become an orchestrator of AI working together. So we have things like you have an MCP call in Claude that calls an agent. That agent is a shared reusable component at your organization. In this case, you can use Zapier agents for this. I'm sure other agents will evolve that you can do this as well. That agent can call other agents. Again, we have the composable, reusable, shareable, verified in your organization, like micro employees that you can call together to work on things. And so I think we're going to start seeing like directories of micro employees that people will then start kind of orchestrating to help them be more effective and get so much more done in the number of hours they work in the day.
maybe piggyback on that. And we see a lot of people self-hosting and building their own software where maybe they could have used some other platform in the past, or maybe augmenting what they already use. So, giving an example of that, right? Like you might be using, you had the example of using the Intercom MCP server and the linear MCP server. But most businesses have some degree of pretty sensitive data that they want to control, or they have some automation that's bespoke to them. And that's really like where we see so many people starting to build things on us and other platforms, where like the MCP server really is the glue that's like the last 20%, the last mile of being able to automate a piece of work. But it's not just like hooking together a bunch of other MCP servers that are out there. It's really like building your own tools. And so I think we're really in this era of like everybody is able to build things now, and how do people like not just use the AI tools that are out there, but and not just like vibe code a website, but build real actual automations that are durable.
That's awesome. Yep. I'm excited about two things. I'm excited about expanding the breadth of integrations that Fin has access to. And like we were chatting earlier, working with your team to basically like figure out how to connect Fin to Zapier and basically like make more use of all of the work that you folks did with the product. The other thing that I'm really excited about is like most of the most valuable customer service work, when you think of like the context of Intercom, it usually means that you have multiple human agents handing off to each other, right? And sort of like you think of the results that we have with Fin today, like in average, you are able to get like 60% resolution rate, 65% resolution rate out of the box. And the next 35%, it's usually the type of like customer query that you call a call center and they're like, hey, I'll pass you to another department. And then suddenly you spoke with sales, marketing, you spoke with service, you spoke again with service, and sort of like the work keeps getting handed off. And like, that's a human problem. Like the scarcity of like consolidated intelligence is a human problem. Like with an agent, you can have all of the wealth of like intelligence of like all of these departments in like one single agent, because you can interoperate between like multiple agents and so on and so forth. So I'm really excited about like what as the standard gets more adopted and like it becomes more consolidated, what we'll be able to do at Fin with MCP, really. So that was the structured part of the session that we had, and yeah, we'd love to open for Q&A. You raise your hand, yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? So my question is, I guess, about the relationship between APIs and MCP going forward. It's sort of like we're in this weird place, and maybe I'll add in like data formats, where you can throw a bunch of text or markdown at agents or LLMs, and you don't really need all the fine-grained definitions that you'd get with JSON or JSON data and things like that. And having derived a lot of trauma from building formats in the past and protocols in the past, I guess I'm wondering, like, if you're opening up an API, I don't know what to call it, an orifice to your software, should it just be like an MCP that like dumps out like Markdown, or do you need to go through the whole process of having a finely, defined API? I understand, like, for a while we'll be in the world, for the next 5 years, where conventional software and other APIs will talk to other APIs, but if we presume that there's like intelligence on the client side or on the receiving end of these negotiations, what is the value of formats and standards going forward?
I have so many questions about this. I think about this a lot. One thing I like to say, speaking as a director of product of AI and agents, is taking something from an API call and making it an agent call is a great way to make it less reliable and more expensive.
Yes.
So I think computers are really great at talking to other computers, and I don't know why we would really want to make them worse at it and charge us more money to do it. Humans are really bad at talking to computers. We don't really know how to do it. So the LLMs just kind of create this really beautiful, smart interstitial space between humans and computers. And I think it would be foolhardy for the industry to put that very expensive space in between computers and computers. I think the value of MCP is allowing humans to interface with computers effectively, and I don't think computer-computer interfaces are going to like become LLMified, because that'd be stupid.
or to end up, to riff on that, to use LLMs in order to create workflows, in order to create the software that ultimately is computer to computer.
So I agree, and that was sort of what I was thinking. But like, just in terms of interop, one of the problems with standards is like when you invent one, there's one more standard. MCP is sort of like one of these strange things that reinvented OAuth, and as a co-author of OAuth, like I'm kind of like, oh, interesting, you guys are solving for the same problems that we solved for many years ago. So in that perspective, from a late binding or just-in-time kind of aspect of getting different API players to get together, and MCP is the way to do that, it sort of obviates the coordination problem of getting everyone to adopt the same standards. So I completely agree with you that computers are very efficient at passing electrons back and forth that look the same, but when it comes to heterogeneous systems that for whatever reason haven't adopted a certain set of APIs, and Zapier is such a good example of this because you talk to so many other things, but if there's the 13th API that comes out that you don't support, MCP is a way to get around that and to sort of get there faster. So I guess that's what I'm asking about. No, you disagree.
I think to Brendan's point, and what we do at Zapier is we have a platform that connects to 8,000 apps and has all that. Great, 40,000 actions. But we also have the ability for you to like create a custom connection, create a custom action using LLM systems, not MCP, but you can use LLMs to create the code. And then verify that it works, and then you have all that, and then you reuse that time and time and time again. So I do think that like the initiation moment of going from a human to a computer, it's very great to have non-determinism, which like MCP, LLM, whatever, non-determinism, it's great. But I think once you know you're going to do that a lot, I think you want it to be a process of building a deterministic thing that then gets reused over and over again. And I think MCP right now, and for a long, long time, the way people are using MCP ad hoc is going to be for things that are ad hoc. And there's always going to be a surface area of ad hoc exploration. And we see this a lot where people like kick around an idea and then be like, ooh, I want to just like do that. And then that's when you want to bake it.
And that process of going organically from something that may be an ad hoc task to almost generating the workflow code. I mean, we have an agents primitive on our platform. We also have a workflows primitive, and they don't compete with each other. They kind of, you need to use the right tool for the job. And a lot of the people who build agents on us, they're actually agents that just call a bunch of workflows.
Yeah, we have the same paradigm, by the way, with Fin and Intercom. Like we had a former product which was a deterministic like workflows product. Incredibly useful. And like we spoke at the early days of Fin, should we kill this product? Like should we just have Fin do everything? And we learned very quickly that in some cases you want the inputs to always spit on the other side the same outputs because there's high risk or there's a bunch of like blockers. So I think the two constructs can coexist and they can be very useful. To your point, it's another standards, another constructs, another primitive, but I guess that's the beauty of it. Like you have different flavors of things for different problems, basically.
I think how we're going to see the ecosystem evolve is we're going to keep having non-determinism for ad hoc, and then we're going to have systems that take non-determinism and bake it into determinism with a little asterisk of like a catch-all bucket of like, it didn't fit all of this stuff, but
yes.
Like, what should I do now? It's kind of like the garbage collector. I don't know. That's already a thing.
I like garbage collector. That's
good.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. So yeah, I think that's where the society is going to like land.
Thank you so much for your discussion. I was super hyped about MCP, but after we shipped our MCP client to production to 100,000 users, I've been a bit more conservative. We've been having a lot of errors like authentication errors, or we don't have the right tools, or the model decides to call a wrong tool, and so on. So from your experience, which big companies have complete, actually working MCP servers? Like I've tried many different, and some of them, they don't work. I mean, they have some infrastructure problems, timeouts, and so on. So which big companies do you think have completely working MCP servers?
Zapier.com/MCP. Well, I mean, we are in the business of making systems talk to other systems, and MCP is just a new layer on that. But it is, so a little bit of background, the Zapier agent product kickstarted as kind of like a raw exploration labs thing in 2023. And we were like, hey, what if Zapier was actually powered by an LLM? Like, what could that be? And then from 2023 to 2025, we were working on and iterating on with real customers, running real workflows, using real LLMs to do real actions. And then in early 2025, we're like, hey, what if we like wrapped this up as an MCP? We've been making this work for a very long time. And it was like, let me tell you, when we were first launching it, we were like, okay, what's our quality threshold for like how predictable? I say predictable, not reliable. I don't like the word reliable for agents because it has like an uptime component. So how predictable do things need to be before we launch? And we're like, well, if it does the right thing like 30% of the time, we should launch. And that was like a high bar at the very beginning, right? And then you just like iterate, and there's like 1,001 surface areas. To find like, oh, there's like a little bit where an LLM can't quite figure that out, so like let's change that. And a year and a half into iterating through that, re-rolling that as MCP, so kind of having a big head start. It's painful. I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of errors of LLMs trying to execute actions, and it's a lot of hill climbing. But Zapier's been doing that hill climbing for a long time for 8,000 apps. So, Zapier.
Yeah. There are layers also of complications, right? Like you folks probably spent like thousands, like dozens of thousands of like hours figuring out the infra layer, like the reliability problem per se, right, at the infra layer, like orchestration, super hard problem, incredibly hard problem. In our case, it's more like for customer experience, right, for Fin, it's much more about like at the application layer, like getting the right use cases for our customers. As I mentioned, like my role changed quite a bit in the last year, and I've been working most of the time with customers, like doing applied AI stuff, literally helping, like sounds fancy, is literally helping customers write descriptions of like tools, right, or like writing prompts and all this type of stuff. So like there's a bunch of like layers of complexity. I think the main thing is like not get too motivated by it and like iterate. I think like the companies that will succeed in using AI, they have an experimental culture. They're okay with the ambiguity and low, to your point, like low threshold to start with, and iterate, and then find what works for you as well, basically. So.
Hello. Hey, Brendan, I have two follow-up questions on your comments previously. So one is, you said it's wrong to basically have MCP exposed as a tool for every API that you have. Why is that? Aside from like the context window, like limitation, let's say, your PayPal, you have a couple of APIs, send money, receive money, whatever. What's wrong with just exposing them as MCP tools as PayPal? And then my second question is, which is unrelated, you said if you were to start a business today, you would set up an MCP server on OpenAI and expose it expose it through ChatGPT. Is that what you said? Can you expand on that? Like, what does that mean? Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna try to hit both of these. I'm gonna use your PayPal example. So, what a client might need PayPal to do would be not just to send you money, but maybe check your balance after and then perform a couple other actions that might be different API calls, right? And what we often see is that a lot of people just map like a bunch of things one-to-one onto different tools, rather than to think about like, what is the task that if you model the MCP server almost like as an agent, what is the task the user is trying to get done, and offer that as a tool. So that's the only point I'm trying to make there. And then for some of the more complex tasks that we ask MCP servers to do, like kind of generating code, it's just going to go faster. The second part about ChatGPT apps is like one of the things we shipped recently is with our Agents SDK, you can take an MCP server that you've built as an agent on Cloudflare, and you can expose that back to ChatGPT as a ChatGPT app. The way that ChatGPT apps work is actually kind of based on the MCP protocol. They kind of piggybacked on top of that. And what's interesting about it is you basically end up with here's this sub-agent, here's this MCP server that can render things in somebody's ChatGPT. And basically, if you think about the user behavior there, people are turning to chat as their web browser. They even launched a web browser last week. And you kind of, if I was starting something right now, like I would want to capture that person. I would want to be the company that, maybe goes after, I don't know, pick an Instacart. Like, what's the version of Instacart that instead of going to instacart.com, you just go to chat? And I think there's tons of empty space out there.
And then you read Brian Balfour's article about the platform play that all platform companies do, and you'd be aware that if you sign up for that kind of distribution channel right now, OpenAI, Anthropic, et cetera, are like wide open platforms, desperate to get folks on because we've got distribution, just like all platforms always do. And then when they acquire enough of the developers, enough of the apps, enough of the experiences, they chomp down and they take all your revenues, like 30% or 50% or more, and charge you for data, and charge you for access, and charge you for everything. So.
But the people who did that early with the App Store, with Facebook, with all these things, Sync is still there.
It's true. It's still there. So yes, I think it's right. I think it's the right play because it's the play that we see happen time and time and time again in technology.
But you have to your point, you have to know what's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. My question is, previously, Brendan, you mentioned that people the models are not good at tools that you've invented because you built like a custom MCP. And then I noticed like Claude released a really native integration with Excel recently, and there's more like, I don't know if that's called a tool or a server or what that is, but how do you build a MCP that is more natively better performing for the clients like Claude or Cursor or ChatGPT? And then another separate tangential question is, we talked about PayPal MCP. What's the difference between that and the Agentic commerce protocol that PayPal also released recently? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Agentic commerce, is that a thing that PayPal sells?
It's like you can actually make a purchase on ChatGPT, and they're calling it like Agentic.
The Agentic commerce protocol.
Like Stripe.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, like, I think once MCP started to take off and people realized, like, okay, this was going to happen, people are going to connect different things. I think what we've started to see is that there's other competing protocols out there. There's other things that are trying to go after more narrow use cases, and that not everything necessarily is going to be MCP, right? So like some of the Agentic protocol stuff, commerce protocol stuff. There's a couple of those things that are out there. They're very purpose built for like checkout flows. How do I purchase a thing in a way that MCP was really designed for, like, how can you be productive? How do you integrate a productivity tool with, an agentic chat interface, something like that? I'm biased in terms of, how to build effective MCP servers. I think like one of the things we've just seen, maybe going back to the answer before, was just like really, really consolidating and starting small and focusing on like getting a couple things really, really nailed down and right. Even ourselves, when we initially shipped all of our MCP servers at Cloudflare, we went pretty wide. We shipped a bunch of different things all over the place, but it was really like the use case for us, at least, of observability for our customers. How do you get all of your logs and telemetry data from Cloudflare back into an agent? That really was the one thing that we felt like we really nailed and wanted to double down on. And so I just kind of recommend people find that one use case that's kind of killer for your customers and don't try to boil the ocean.
I would say at a really different layer of answering that question, use CSV, not JSON. It's way more token efficient at the end.
Yes, agree.
Don't use JSON. It's a bad format for LLMs. It's expensive.
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. So, Anna, you mentioned the concept of coworkers, like mini coworkers, right? So, my question is not only limited to MCP and tool calling, but how do you see the space evolving in terms of human-AI collaboration? And what do you think the platform is going to be of the future, the work platform is going to be for this era of generative AI and human AI collaboration. For example, people use Slack, Google Workspace, and so on to work today because people are working with people, but when people are going to be working with mini coworkers, mini AI coworkers, and also, what type of mini coworkers do you think are going to be the most valuable? Is it going to be intern types where they can take the mundane tasks away from you, or perhaps the coach type where they can help you become a better engineer, better professional that you are? So, like, how do you see this evolving?
I love this question. I think that we see this already at Zapier, where people deploy fleets of things on Zapier, fleets of Zaps or agents or things like that, where you're like, okay, well, I want my sales team to be really effective at preparing for their sales calls. So I'm going to have a sales prep agent that every salesperson gets. So you join the company, you join the sales, you get the sales prep agent, the sales call prep agent. The like schedule follow-up call system is like everyone gets. So I think what we're going to see is like when you join an organization, you're going to get your like Okta or whatever for your personal authentications to things, and then you're going to get your like fleet of AI systems that are specific to your function, to your department, and it's going to be like composable pieces of things. It's like, okay, here's what to use for scheduling. Here's how to, here's the front door for interacting with any help desk issue of the company, things like that. And I think we're going to see these fleets of micro employees, and I think it's going to be across productivity and also across coaching and things like that. I see this internally at Zapier. One of my favorite things, we have a custom GPT actually that's trained on all of our executives' personalities and things they care about and what they tend to say in meetings, and you can throw a doc at it and say like, all right, what is the executive team going to say about this? And then custom GPT like tears it to shreds. It's like, all right, well, this executive's going to ask this question, which is exactly what they would ask. And so it saves so much time and heartache by kind of giving you, as you're preparing something, really like a pre-meeting, basically. And then it helps the executive team make more efficiency out of their time. And we also have an agent that our exec team uses to review all of their meetings and offer like coaching feedback to each participant in the meeting on how to be a more effective teammate in the executive team, right? Who's using up the most airtime, who's being the most decisive and being the most helpful, and like how, and they get like a scorecard. So I think we'll see things like that, and we're just going to end up with these incredible like decks of Pokemon cards of things that you can just kind of use. I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Well, what we've seen with Intercom and Fin as well is like we ended up with different architectures for different types of outcomes. We were talking about like coaching versus like doing the work itself. When we were building our Copilot product, we have a Copilot product which basically helps you write replies to customers on the inbox, on the help desk. Our first hypothesis was like, let's just put everything in the same architecture and like try to make things work that way. And actually, we learned over time that actually we need totally different architectures for sort of like a coach, like to your point, versus like something that's automating the work. You're optimizing for different things, right? Like more precision or less precision, and so on and so forth. And we ended up with the same paradigm, by the way, on the different channels that we have. You make different trade-offs, right? Like, for example, on chat, maybe a latency of 10 seconds is okay. Like if you're having a phone conversation and the agent takes like 10 seconds to reply, like you think something went wrong, you think something broke, right? So I think like you end up with like different architectures across different like types of actions and so on, different use cases, basically different outcomes. Which is your point also, like previously, Brendan. Like when you think of like the former like APIs as well and so on, like composability was a thing, right? It was like you thought of composability in terms of like objects and like create, delete, change the object. Whereas I think with agents is much more like outcome focused and like task focused, right? Like how do you execute this task from start to finish as well. So, yeah.
I think we'll take one more question from the audience. That sound good?
Who's got the best question?
Goodness, the guy who's taking notes.
It's not the best question.
Sorry.
I'm wondering if there's a place where we can get to from non-determinism to determinism going forward. Is there a setup where we can be sure, maybe use this for trading, be very deterministic in what we do?
Did anyone hear that?
I didn't catch the end of the question.
I was wondering, right now MCPs are pretty non-deterministic, and we have to use a lot of additional tools or guardrails to make it deterministic. I was wondering if there's a future where they become deterministic and if there's a path to that.
Well, one thing I've seen a lot of people start to experiment with is, I'll try to explain this. If I ask another agent, if I ask an MCP server to do something for me, say like totally unstructured input, and the first time it goes and executes this task, it has to do it, to maybe your point, in a way that's kind of non-deterministic, that's like ad hoc, I think is the word you used. Well, once it's done that run, it has the log of everything that happened. And so why not go write yourself some code, and then for the next time, try calling that code, because you know the task, you know the steps that you just took, and you know basically what needs to execute, and you can build yourself a deterministic program. And you made the point of like this garbage collection at the end, right? Of like, well, you tried to do the thing deterministically and it doesn't work, and then you do it non-deterministically and you run it again, and then, oh, we found another use case. Let's go update the code. And you kind of go in this loop again, and you're like, this is kind of how we build software, right? Like, you try to do a thing, and then you write some code around it, and then it's automated. And that's the same thing that we're going to do. We're just going to do it in an automated way, and it's all going to be agents. And if you want to try doing that, you should try it on Cloudflare, because there's great ways to kind of execute that code in a sandbox. That's kind of a lot of what we've been working on is, how do you provide agents with these sandboxes where they can execute their own code really easily?
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.